So a few months ago I made a rig for the Sony ZV-E10 and I wanted to build the whole rig for under $500, and you guys seem to love that video. It was very, very popular. So I thought it'd be interesting to maybe build another rig for this camera, but ask the question of how minimal of a rig can you build? And I don't mean minimal as in small necessarily, but minimal as in simple, right? Really easy to put together, really easy to use, and cheap. So I still want to keep under that $500 price point, but just build a more simple rig. And this is what I came up with. I think it's a pretty cool little rig. It's very simple, but let's break it down and build it all back together again so that you can kind of see the kind of thought process that went into this rig. All right, so here we have our camera and our lens. We got a pretty big lens on here, but this is my favorite lens for this camera by far, the Tamron 17-70. Now the build of this rig is obviously not including your camera and your lens. You're gonna have to already have those for this whole rig to be under $500. So the aim behind this rig is basically we are gonna cut out all of the fluff. Anything that is not necessary for the camera, we're gonna cut out. And try to keep to the absolute basics, just things that really make a difference for your workflow. Now, actually, the other thing I love about this rig is that this works for any camera, right? Basically, any camera that has a cage for it, you can get to basically work with this rig design. All you're really going to need is a cage. Now, when you're picking a cage, if you don't have a cage for your camera yet, there are two things I'd probably recommend looking for. That is one with an Arca Swiss plate on the bottom. That is nice to have, not compulsory, but nice to have. And a NATO rail built into the top. So that's one of the reasons I really like this handle by Left Photo for the Sony ZV-E10 over the small rig one, is it has this NATO rail built into the top here that actually just makes things a whole lot easier and simpler. And it's got an Arca Swiss plate on the bottom. The only downside to this cage is it only has one point of contact, so just keep that in mind. But if you're looking for a cage, those are the two things I'd recommend for this build, is just find one with an Arca Swiss plate and a NATO rail built in. So once you have your cage on here and your lens back on, there are three main components to this build. And that is your camera and lens base, right? Which is this, your camera, your lens, any filters you want to add, and your cage. This is the main base of the camera rig, and you can strip this down to this within seconds very, very easily. So if you want to go back to a handheld photography style camera, you totally can. The next thing that we're going to add is battery power. One of the best reasons to have a cinema rig is because you can power all of your accessories that are connected to your camera from one much larger battery, especially for the ZV-E10 with these tiny little batteries, or something like the Blackmagic cameras, which battery life is not very good. It's very beneficial to add external batteries. Now, one of my favorite batteries is the SmallRig 99 Pro, but this is like a $300 battery. And it's fantastic. It's got a lot of great features, but we can't afford this in this rig. So we're going to go with this one by Neewer, which looks almost identical. Okay, so like these are very, very similar designs. Now there are a couple of differences. This one's got a nice big power button on the center there, and it'll show you a whole bunch of stats to tell you how much battery life you have left, how much charge is going out from each port. One of the things I like about this battery is it has a USB-A and a USB-C port on the side, and it actually is on the side that I like to have it on for rig builds. So we're going to use this battery, and we need a way of attaching this onto the back of the camera. Now this isn't the cheapest product in the world, but this is the V-mount battery hinge by SmallRig. It's typically around $100. At the time of recording this, it is on sale to about $80, and I've seen it go on sale a lot. But it's basically a V-mount battery plate that can sort of swing back and forth. Just makes it very simple, and it's got an Arca Swiss plate built into the bottom. So that just makes it super handy that if you want to attach your camera, you can actually just attach it straight onto this battery plate. And we're not going to be worrying about rails or anything because we have autofocus. We're not worried about follow focuses and stuff like that. So this basically acts as our base plate and our battery holder at the same time. Now you can build one of these yourself. If you have a cheese plate and a V-mount plate and a monitor mount lying around, you can build a little hinge very, very easily. But if you're getting started, this little thing is very, very handy. So you can just take your battery, slot it onto the back here, and then you just take your cage and you slide that onto the base of this and lock it in place. And there you go. Now, if you already own a cage and it doesn't have the Arca Swiss plate on the bottom, you don't need to worry because the SmallRig V-mount hinge thing comes with a couple of Arca Swiss plates. So you can take one of the included Arca Swiss plates and attach it onto the bottom of your cage. You get this lined up nicely, lock it into place. And there you have it. Already we've got a pretty cool looking little build here. Now obviously you can see that the screen is obstructed, right? I cannot access the screen. That's one of the great things about this is you can just lower the battery, open the screen up, pop that back, and then I can keep my screen there, if I want to have it on the side. If I want to protect the screen and tuck it back in, all I have to do is fold the battery down, pop it back in, and that's great. So now we have 2 of our 3 pieces done. That's the camera base and the battery plate. Lastly, we're going to add a monitor. The monitor on the ZV-10 isn't great. It's very small, and it's always beneficial to have an external monitor. Now for this build, we're going to be using this one by Viltrox. It is a really cool little sort of 5-inch monitor. It's a 5.5, maybe closer to 6. It's pretty large. It's the DC550. This is the Pro version. I'm going to recommend just getting the DC550. It's basically the same thing, but I think it doesn't have the touchscreen. But it's nice and bright. It's got 1200 nits of brightness. It's got a bunch of features, waveforms, vector scopes. It's got D-squeeze for anamorphic lenses. Tons of stuff that you need, all built into the monitor itself. And it's also got an SD cards port where you can add your own LUTs. So if you use LUTs for previewing your footage, that's incredibly handy to have. One of my favorite things about this monitor though is, well, 2 things. First off, it's got an on-off switch. So instead of just a button and you never know if it's actually pressed in, it's just got this nice little switch for on and off, and it's got multiple powering options. So you can power it with a battery, which comes included. We're not going to use that though. You can power it by DC, or you can power it by USB-C, which just USB-C is so simple and easy to use. So we're going to be using that one. Now this monitor comes with a handful of accessories, right? So you got a nice little carrying case for it. So, you know, if you want to carry your monitor around, this is a really nice case for that. And inside there are a handful of accessories. So different HDMI cables. I didn't get a micro HDMI cable, which I thought was odd. Now I don't know if it typically comes with one, but I only got a mini and a regular. So if you need a micro HDMI, you're gonna have to buy one separately. It comes with its own branded little NPF battery, which is really nice. And the nice thing with this one is it does power over USB-C, so you can charge it. You don't need an NPF charging block. And it comes with a monitor mount. Now the monitor mount is the one thing that disappointed me out of this whole package. I do think that this is a fantastic monitor and I highly recommend it. The monitor mount though just is not great. Everything just kind of feels a little loose. You know, it doesn't hold very well in place. It's a cold shoe mount, which is fine, but cold shoe mounts just typically aren't very good in my opinion. It works, but you know, I'd replace it if I were you. And the last thing it comes with is this really cool lens hood. So I'll go ahead and stick this back on here. So this is a really nice little lens hood that like pops open. So it's got a really low profile. It protects the screen, which is really nice. And then it's got this little lever under here that just flips it up, and you got this really nice sun hood. And you got this really nice sun hood that kind of helps shade. So if you're out on a really bright day, you got your brightness already up to 1200 nits, but you still can't see it. This is just really handy to have, and it protects the screen quite nicely. And it's like a hard plastic, so that's just kind of nice to have. Now I replaced the monitor mount on this, and I replaced it with a Sirui little NATO rail to monitor mount hinge thingy, because the top of the camera cage that I'd recommend will have a built-in NATO rail. All the cameras that I use, my favorite ones are the ones that have built-in NATO rails on top cage. The A6700 cage that I'm using right now has it, and the FX30 also has a built-in NATO rail on the top. Now if your cage doesn't have a NATO rail, I'd still recommend this monitor mount because it comes with a NATO rail, so you can add that onto your existing cage. So we'll go ahead and we slide this on straight onto the cage like that, lock it into place. Now the last thing I would say to add would be a tripod plate. So, you know, if you have a tripod that you plan on using with this, just whatever plate that you have, go ahead and attach this on the bottom. And here we have it. This is basically the rig complete. The only thing we have to do is run our cables. And the nice thing about the cable management for this is it's super simple. We've got 3 cables. We got our HDMI cable to the monitor, USB-C to the camera for power delivery, and USB to the monitor to power the monitor. So this is it. This is all the cables that we need for this entire rig, which if you've ever seen cinema rigs before, sometimes you can end up with a ton of cables. This is all I need. So first off, we'll go ahead and we'll attach our HDMI cables. I like using these little right angle HDMI cables. I find they're very, very nice to use. They're small and they stay out of the way, so I would go ahead and attach that. And then one of the nice things about this battery hinge mount is there's a tiny little gap in behind the battery and the camera. So you can just run your cables in behind there and tuck them in, and they really stay nicely out of the way. Cover them up with your monitor, and then go ahead and plug the HDMI cable into the monitor. Now, one of the interesting things about this monitor that a lot of people talk about is the HDMI, and it is interesting. It's right at the bottom of the monitor. Now, that's actually nice and annoying. So it's nice in that it keeps cables coming out from the sides, you know, like big cables like popping out the side and coming around, but it's just a little too close. I just wish it wasn't quite as close to this monitor mount, because if you use a wider monitor mount, it gets in the way. Or even with this Sirui one, this little tightening bolt here to tighten the monitor, if it's on the other side, it blocks the whole port. So it's like, it's great but it's also just a little bit too close to everything else. Now, as I said, on the side here, we have 2 USB ports on this battery. So right here, we have a USB-A and a USB-C. We're going to be using both of those, and I have these little sort of braided USB-C to USB-C and USB-A to USB-C. This little short 6-inch USB-C is going to go from the USB-C port in the battery into the USB-C port on the camera. Now it's a super short little cable, so that just keeps it really, really neat. And then the last thing is to take the USB-A cable, and we're going to run our USB-A cable up to the monitor. Just sort of wrap it around a couple of things to keep it nice and neat. But very simple. That just runs into there. And here we have it, a super simple little rig. Now you're probably asking yourself, Thomas, where are the handles? No handles. We're not adding any of those today. What about the mat box? No mat box. In this rig, we're trying to build it to be as simple and as basic as possible. You can add whatever you want to this. This is a great place to start, but for this rig, I wanted to say, let's cut all the fluff out. Anything that is not necessary, we will remove. Now, do I recommend adding handles to a rig? Absolutely. I love a good handle, especially the top handle. I think is incredibly valuable. Do I recommend mat boxes? Yeah, I think they look kind of cool, and the top flag helps a little bit, but honestly, unless you're buying one of the higher end ones with nice filtration systems, they're really not necessary, right? It's a luxury item to add to a camera. It's you know, it adds a cool look, but really it doesn't add a whole lot. So just a couple of step up rings to your filters. You know, to me that's plenty. You know, it does exactly the same thing. And if you have problems with flares, just stick your hand over the front of it, right? You can sort of block a lot of the light doing the exact same thing. So this is a no nonsense, no fluff, basics monitor that has every accessory that you need. We've got a battery that powers your monitor with a USB-C cable, and powers your camera also with a USB-C cable. Everything runs nice and neat. It's quite small, very simple. And then once you get everything powered on, you can see just with a couple of little USB-C cables, you have powered your camera and your monitor, and you got a cool little rig here. Super simple, very basic, but a great place to start. You can throw a handle on here if you want to. You can throw your mat box on, whatever you want to add from here. But if you're looking for a base package that costs this much, this is total with everything that's currently a lot of this is on sale. But total, you know, around that price, I think this is a great way to go. Now, the nice thing is we can do the exact same thing with any other camera. So here I've taken my Sony FX30 with its cage, and it can all do exactly the same thing. Just slide it straight onto the battery plate, attach the monitor, you know, and here we have the exact same rig for the Sony FX30. I just need to run the cables. It'll obviously need the other HDMI cable, but it all works exactly the same way. But I want to know what you think. Is this kind of up your alley? Do you want a nice, minimal, very easy rig that can just be taken apart, you know, in seconds? You know, you can go from having your monitor rig, your battery plate, everything all swapped out just to your camera, just like that? Or do you prefer the idea of a big, massive cinema rig with follow focuses, mat boxes, you know, monitors, external recorders, batteries, all of the things, all the nice handles? If you are, make sure to hit the subscribe button, because I'm in the process of building a nice cinema rig for the Sony FX30, which is looking to be a pretty expensive cinema rig, but it's a sweet rig and I'm very excited about it. So if you want to see that, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And one last piece of business before we wrap up here. A couple of weeks ago, I released a video talking about accessories for the Sony ZV-E10, and we're doing a bit of a giveaway in that video. So I promised that in a couple of weeks I'd announce the winner. So we had 40 people ended up commenting on the video, and we're going to go ahead and pick a winner, and that is Michael P. Madison. Congratulations. I'm going to get in touch with you on Instagram here. By the time this is posted, I'll have already talked to you and we'll have arranged the details, but congratulations. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, drop a comment down below. I want to know your thoughts on these style of rigs, and maybe even subscribe as we continue to build this channel. I appreciate all of you for doing so, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.